Welcome to Talking Science, where we dive into the latest news from space and science. Macquarie University's Dr. Christian Schwab is here to discuss a new type of spectrometer that will aid in the discovery of exoplanets. Christian, thanks for your time.
Thanks very much for having me.
This is a Trek Zone conversation. And you can get exclusive behind-the-scenes info and first-play access to all Trek Zone podcasts by becoming a member today. Click join on every Trek Zone video on YouTube. Go to thetrek.zone/support or scan the QR code on screen throughout the show. Now, it's back to you, Matt.
Well, thank you very much, Ross. And a quick reminder too that we are across social media. Search for Trek Zone on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and your favourite podcast feed, and like, follow, and subscribe to us. Leave comments and ratings. That'll help convince the algorithms we're worth promoting. Christian, let's talk spectrometers. And as I understand it, precision is key when it comes to scanning for exoplanets in particular.
Yes, it is. The name of the game is getting the highest precision spectrograph right now to really find Earth-like exoplanets. So unlike other fields of astronomy, in exoplanets, we really search for the one really interesting one. Right, in galaxies, we are at the point where we have thousands of them and people do statistics with them. But in exoplanets, we're really looking for that one elusive Earth 2.0 that is really like our own home planet, and getting to measure that one requires extreme precision from the instruments we build.
So the more precise we get, the smaller the planet we can discover. Is that why our discoveries are skewed slightly to gas giant exoplanets at the moment?
Yes, that's exactly right. So in the beginning, people thought that exoplanets, or Jupiter-like exoplanets, hot Jupiters even, may be very abundant because that's what we found all the time. But this is really a detection effect coming from the fact that we can find them more easily. They produce a much larger signal. So if we use spectrometers to find exoplanets, the technology we use is really, or the technique we use is called the Doppler technique. We don't see the light of the planet itself. We see the light of the star. And what we detect is changes in the spectrum of the star caused by the planet pulling the star around. That wobble causes the spectral lines to shift slightly back and forth. And if you think about the strength of the effect, Jupiter produces a pulling effect, a wobble around the sun of something like on the order 20 meters per second. But the Earth only produces an effect of 9 centimeters per second, so much, much smaller. And while 9 centimeters per second don't sound like a very small speed to measure, so it's often compared to, that's about the speed of a turtle. What we measure it with is light. And so you have to compare those 9 centimeters per second to the speed of light at 300,000 kilometers per second. And the net result is that the fractional change, the minute shifts in spectrum are really on level of a part in a billion. That makes those spectrometers so hard to build.
Now, the NUID spectrometer you've helped develop has recently passed its final NASA review and is fully operational at the Kitt Peak National Observatory in Arizona, as we're seeing here. It's an 81 megapixel detector spanning across the light spectrum to detect wobbles on stars, which are the key indicators of planet transits. Can you tell us how all that works to a trained eye, of course?
So what we do is we observe the same target stars over and over and over again. We spread their light with the spectrometer over a large detector. It's like the physical size is like this, 9 by 9 centimeters, many, many pixels. So we record the spectrum in very high detail. And by looking over and over again, we see if the spectrum changes over the course of what we expect an exoplanet orbit to be. So if you want to find something like Earth, then it takes Earth a year to revolve around the sun. So you really want to look over and over again over the course of a year, or ideally more than that. And so we have a list of stars that have been pre-screened, so we know they don't behave oddly. They have the right stability and spectra themselves that you can look for planets around them. And now we just started looking over and over again any clear night that we have the spectrometer for the next 5 years, in the hope that an Earth-like exoplanet will pop up.
Now, a small scale copy has been installed at the Macquarie University Observatory. Now, while it's not as powerful, it will enable students to undertake some practical training. What sizes of exoplanets can be viewed at Macquarie University?
It depends on how the code development goes the next few months. Now in lockdown, probably our grad students have a bit more time to code, but really the precision we could get here, I hope, will be in the few meters per second range, maybe about 5 meters per second. So things like hot Jupiters, or indeed, for example, the very first planets that have been found with this technique, including the one around 51 Pegasi that got the Nobel Prize awarded a few years ago, should be easily observable from here. The spectrograph is really a half-size copy of NUIT. And what's interesting there is it's much cheaper because we didn't have a particular precision goal, right? We wanted this as a teaching tool, and it's really interesting, at least it was very interesting for me to see just how much cost we can cut if we don't try to get to the very highest stability. So for the real deal for NUIT, we had a large team of people that really came together, that turned every screw around, really tried to make sure that there's nothing in that whole instrument that can somehow break our stability goal. Here, we will get what we get. And this factor 10 in the bottom, like going from a few meters per second to sub-meter per second, is really the difference between putting it together with a few people or having a team of 30 people working 3 years.
NUID now forms the blueprint for future spectrometers. What's it like to know this design will be used well into the future?
It's very exciting to have found that particular solution to the problem, right? And so I led the optics design for NUID when I was a postdoc, still in the United States. And so what we really did is we looked at the problem from the top. We said, okay, like let's start new, let's start fresh, let's have a really good look at what is really needed in particular to make spectrograph stable. And so the design that I arrived at was the simplest we could find, because the fewer lenses you have in there, the fewer lenses can be misaligned over time. So we really developed something that has the fewest lenses of any spectrograph of that size in the business, is as simple as we can make it to be able to make it as stable as we can make it. And it seems to work. We just passed the review, as you said. We deliver about 0.3 meters per second on Sky. That's about the best in the world. It's very, very satisfying to see, after years of truly being worried that it may not work, that it actually does work. And now we have that design developed, and we're very, welcoming to other people working with us if they want to build something similar. And of course, things have been published. So this is now a design that's out in the open, and that has been verified. And it's great if it gets, propagated, and we move it further to even better precision in the future.
And the materials used to create these spectrometers, is it tricky to get a hold of the materials? I'm guessing it has to sort of be of a particular quality to be able to get to this point of being ultra precise.
Yeah, we looked at this quite a bit. In the end, we decided to make all the mounts, all the spectrograph mechanics of a particular type of aluminium. A common type, we buy very high grade of that common type, but we make everything out of the same metal to not have changes between the thermal expansion rate between, let's say, a mount that holds a lens and another mount that holds a mirror, and then the bench itself. So going to aluminium really helped us to keep the cost at least somewhat in check. It's nice, the machine, and it thermalizes very well. It has high thermal conductivity. For the lenses, things were a bit more tricky. The lenses in that instrument are about 270 millimeters diameter. So we don't use particularly uncommon glasses. That goes back to, let's keep it as simple as we can, but you can't buy them in that size. And so our large prism had to be custom melted for us. All our lenses, the material was custom melted for us in that size. It took a long while, and then you end up with a It's that large lens block, and you really hope you don't break it. So in particular, the prism, which was the block was some 400 millimeters on the side, and that one got lifted into the spectrograph. No one wanted to really do it. It was just, okay, let's just put it down very, very carefully, very carefully. And it's a beautiful piece of glass. You have that big thing. It's completely transparent. It's made from lead crystal, like your wine glasses at home, which, as you probably know, break easily. And so, yeah, it was an interesting thing, and we were glad that we got this block at all. It was a Japanese company who made it for us.
So I guess there were a lot of sighs of relief in the room when it was finally put into position. No more fine adjustments needed. Being able to see that and then see it actually working and working well must have been a very good feeling as well.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, seeing the first spectrum at all come out of the instrument, so that you can literally, if you take the big detector off and you put a white piece of paper there, you see the spectrum. It just projected, and it's all these beautiful colors, and these are prime colors, right? Most colors we see in real life are not prime colors. They're, something reflects and is subtracted, but these are really pure colors, and it looks, if you designed this and you see it come to life after those big lenses have been ordered and everything has been put in, and you see it in real life, it was great. And having it then on the mountain was even better.
Now, I know you said that the small-scale copy there at Macquarie University is not of the same quality, but are you still striving for that effort as well? Have a as best of a replica as you can of NUID?
Yeah, the optics design is actually very similar. It's just exactly half the size. And if we go half the size, all the glass materials all of a sudden are off the shelf. You can just buy them. Our workshops here made all the aluminium mounts, again, half-size copy. So the optics and the mechanics are really very similar. But what we don't have is an enclosure that holds the temperature very well. So NUID is in an enclosure, which is in an enclosure, which is in an enclosure, which is in vacuum, which is in an outer kind of meat locker type room, which is in another bigger room that's temperature stabilized. And all these things have dozens of temperature controllers all over them, the most precise you can buy in the world, to keep this thing as stable as possible. Because that minor shift that we talked about, this like part in a billion, is really a movement of the spectrum on your detector of only a few atoms in the detector of a shift. And that complicated onion layered thing we just can't really do here. But in terms of the optics and in terms of the mechanics and the development, this is a professional instrument. Was built by a grad student here in our department. So he learned a lot and is actually on to the next bigger one, for that matter. And it's very nice to see locally students being able to do that kind of research in class or for their thesis with an instrument that feels completely professional. It just doesn't have the temperature stability that the big one would have.
Very exciting stuff, Christian. Looking forward to seeing what NUID produces in the years to come, and even the Macquarie University Observatory as well. Thank you for beaming into TrekZone today. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very, very much.